Tuesday night drama on BBC One, paranoia in EastEnders, ruthless ambition at Holby, and a twist of fate in The Missing. All to come after The One Show.
Well, hello there, and welcome to The One Show with Alex Jones.
And Matt Baker. Now, tonight's guest has starred in Bond films, Doctor Who, Harry Potter, Shrek, Pink Panther, The Avengers, list goes on, really.
Yeah, but as well as all of that big stuff, he's also dabbled in a little bit of comedy, working with a few mates known as the Pythons, and he was in a sitcom which only ran for 12 episodes. Now, what was it called again? Was it, it was Fatty Owls, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't.
What was it, Farty Towels?
No, not Farty Towels. Oh,
Go on.
Matt, get a grip. It was Faulty Towels.
Well, it is the Panto
It
season.
is. Please welcome one of our greats. It is, of course, John Cleese.
John Cleese. John, welcome, sir. Welcome. Take a seat.
Come on.
Nice to be back.
Oh, that's it. Go
Lovely
on.
to see you. Are you well?
Yes, I always forget how tall you are.
There we are.
Well,
Me too.
only in
Likewise.
heels, you see.
Oh,
Only in
is it?
heels,
Is that
John.
right? Oh.
You should try it. It's good.
Now,
Anyway.
is it true, John, that you are not a fan of a pun?
I'm not. I don't think puns are a very high form of wit. No, you're right.
Right.
And I once said I thought there were 3 rules in comedy. 1 was no puns. 2 was absolutely no puns.
Right.
And rule 3 was no puns whatsoever under any circumstance.
Okay, well, we
I
only
don't think he's going to like this.
Well, we
next
only read up to
Oh,
number 4,
what's
didn't we?
this? Oh,
And
yeah.
unfortunately, we'd like to introduce you to the Cleesmas Advent calendar. There we are. Sorry, John.
Sorry, John, but the good
well.
news is, right, as you can see, 25 windows, a classic advent calendar. And behind all windows, there's a brilliant
Silly
picture.
people.
I know. There's a brilliant picture which hopefully will lead to an anecdote which you've included in your autobiography.
Yeah.
You see, it's a device.
all
It's
right.
a device.
That's what you're going to love it tonight. You really are. So,
I'm going
well,
to choose a number.
well, to be honest with you,
Correct.
John, we couldn't resist opening the first one for you.
All right.
So here it is. This is what happened today. And there's a wonderful picture of you as a bearded teacher.
Yes.
Now
When
this
I was
is all
19.
I thought you were 19
I
now.
was 19, yes.
Okay, now this is all to do with the story of a little white-haired boy as a history
Yes, little
pupil.
bastard, yes.
Pardon. Oh, excuse
no,
me.
you
Can't say that was
Come
said.
Yeah, go
Well,
on.
can I say something a little illegitimate, chap?
All right. Go on.
Yes, well, what happened was that when I got into Cambridge, I had to wait for 2 years before I could go. And the old
Right.
headmaster from my prep school, where I'd been a boy, he rang me up and said, would you like to have a job teaching at school till you go to Cambridge? And I said, I'd love to.
Yeah, perfect.
Why do you want me to teach? And he said, I want you to teach English, history and geography. And I said, I've been doing science for 3 years. I don't know anything about any of them. And he said to me, I promise you, he said this, he said, John, there are 10-year-olds. Stay a page ahead.
Right.
So I started teaching history the first day, and there was this little kid, I can't remember his name, maybe he's watching tonight, with white hair. And I discovered to my horror that he knew the dates of all the kings and queens of England. And he said, what were the dates of Henry VIII? You know, and I said, I'm not talking about Henry VIII.
Yeah.
You know, and then I said, I've got to go back to the staff common room. I ran back and looked it up. Came in, oh, incidentally, 1590, 1547. And then he said, what about Charles I? And I nearly said, that's not fair, which would have been a bit of a mistake. But I disappeared upstairs after that. And I learned all the dates of all the kings and queens of England.
So
And I
you
have
owe
to
him a
tell
lot.
you, he did me a great favour, because once I knew those dates, it all fell into place. It was the best turn he could have done me.
Well, as you said, John, if you are watching the white-haired young boy,
Yes.
please get in touch, because John would love to say thanks.
I would,
you?
and I was in a restaurant two weeks ago on a Sunday, and a fellow called Richard Morris, who I taught, came up to me. He's now 69.
Oh, well.
No, and I taught him, and he's coming to have dinner with me on Sunday.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, that's lovely.
It's lovely
Yeah,
to
that's
have a
really
connection.
nice.
You might have some more guests round for
Well,
dinner,
that would
because
be
if
fun.
any of John's former pupils are out there, other than Richard Morris, then do send us a school picture if you've got one, goodness me, and tell us your story about being taught by Mr. Cleese,
Yeah.
with a beard.
All right, and
I
you
was
can get-
teaching one guy. I remember I was trying to teach him about geography. I was trying to teach him that the river Congo went through what in those days was called the Belgian Congo.
Right.
Whereas the
Right.
river Niger went through Nigeria. And I said to him, you see the connection between Niger and Nigeria Congo? I said, so which country do you think the river Congo goes through? Nigeria? I said, no, you see, it's Nigeria, and it's Congo.
Yeah,
Belgian Congo. Now, what country does the Niger go through? It was just extraordinary. And I suddenly realised that even if you're teaching something very, very simple, there's got to be a moment when someone kind of makes a mental jump to get something, even if it's not a very big jump. And I never forgot this. And I told the senior master about it because I was a little bit shaken. You know, when you can't get something like that
Yes.
across and you don't get it. And he said to me a wonderful phrase. He said, John, he said, the sad thing about true stupidity is that you can do nothing about it.
Oh. Do you know, John?
boy,
we've got
poor
this.
boy.
We've got this advent calendar. We've got loads of anecdotes that we want to get through. So we'll have to hold it there for now. But we'll play a little film and then we'll chat some more. Because in the news today, MPs have criticised the Post Office for how it handled claims that an IT system caused around 150 sub-postmasters to be accused of stealing vast amounts of money.
Now, some have gone bankrupt, others have even gone to prison. So, Inside Out's Nick Wallace went in search of the truth.
From the far reaches of Scotland to here, the most southerly point in Britain, reputations have been ruined, people bankrupted and even jailed.
Yet the men and women at the heart of this story aren't part of some hardcore criminal underworld. They are, or were, part of this, the Post Office.
Sue Knight from the village of St Kevin in Cornwall worked for the Post Office for 32 years.
The job meant everything. It was my whole life. Literally, yeah, everything was. It was something that I was very, very proud to be of.
Sue lived next door to her post office and loved serving the community. Then 3 years ago, £22,500 appeared to be missing. The post office pointed the finger at Sue, sacked her and took her to court.
I was absolutely lost. I was absolutely lost, and I thought, how am I going to face these people because I've let them down?
Sue believes glitches in the post office computer system Horizon meant it showed losses that didn't exist. When the case came to court, she says she felt under pressure from all sides to plead guilty to false accounting.
It was very frightening, but I stood there as they were reading it out again, expecting me to put a plea in. And I just stood there and shook my head and said no. And that was the truth.
10 days later, the post office dropped the case, saying while they were satisfied they were right, it wasn't in the public interest to continue. They refused to let Sue return to work. Now she's not only lost the job she loved, she's selling her home because she can't afford the mortgage.
My daughter, about a month back, actually bought the weekly food. She's only 19 and she's a student. And the fact she thought we had to do that. Post office have no idea what they've done. No idea.
So what could have prompted the post office's sudden turnaround?
Well, this report by forensic accountants found there were problems with the Horizon computer system. It also raised serious concerns about the way the Post Office pursued sub-postmasters who had problems with the system.
And who commissioned that report? The Post Office. The Horizon system processes millions of post office transactions every day, mostly without problems. If the books don't balance, postmasters are contractually obliged to cough up the difference themselves. Faced with shortfalls they couldn't explain, some postmasters signed off their accounts after the post office's own helpline told them any problem should sort itself out. The sub-postmaster from Gaywen in Anglesey, Noel Thomas, was told he owed the post office £48,000. He spent his 60th birthday in jail for false accounting and went bankrupt. Jackie MacDonald, a sub-postmistress in Broughton, Lancashire, was convicted of stealing £94,000 and jailed for 18 months. With the post office saying they had computer evidence of a crime, Noel and Jackie told us they felt they'd no option but to plead guilty, a decision both have since told me they bitterly regret. Professor Charles McLaughlin has been an expert witness in 6 sub-postmasters' cases.
It's absolutely clear that the makers of the system have admitted there are faults, and those faults could lead to discrepancies that would make losses for postmasters. There are sub-postmasters who are unable to demonstrate that they have not committed false accounting or fraud because the Post Office has not released the information that would allow us to investigate that properly.
Questions were raised in Parliament. Was dodgy data from the Post Office's computer system responsible for sending innocent people to prison? MPs demanded the Post Office look at 150 individual cases. A year on, those same MPs have announced they've lost faith in the Post Office's mediation scheme, claiming it excludes anyone who's pleaded guilty.
The Post Office seems to have spent a large amount of public money on setting up a mediation scheme, which it is then trying to prevent sub-postmasters from making use of. It's an awful way of behaving, really is.
You must be furious.
I'm devastated, frankly, yes.
The Post Office have refused to give us an interview about cases like Sue Knight's or Horizon. They say their own independent review found no systemic problems. Next week, there'll be a special debate in Parliament as MPs try to hold the Post Office to account. For people like Sue, it can't come soon enough.
Well, Nick joins us now. You said there in the piece that the Post Office refused to give you an interview, but you have been in contact with them today, haven't you?
Yes.
What have they said?
We've had a response, and they've said that if significant shortfalls of cash appear in any Post Office branch, then they have a clear duty to investigate. And they said with regard to the mediation scheme, around a quarter of all the people who applied to it had a criminal conviction. Some of those people had pleaded guilty, and a very small number had been convicted by a jury in a full court of law, who'd had the opportunity to read the reams and reams of evidence that would go along with a case like this.
OK, and the MPs, they're up in arms with how the Post Office are handling the situation, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, them coming out and saying they've got no faith in the Post Office handling this situation is just a mark of the frustration. I mean, 12 months ago, they persuaded the Post Office to look again at some of these sub-postmaster cases. And with great fanfare, this mediation scheme was set up, and it was being presided over by an appeals court judge. And I think 12 months on, you've got these cases that have just been bogged down. Some of them have been mediated, but many of those sub-postmasters still haven't had the opportunity to sit down with the Post Office face-to-face and try and find out what's going on.
And from a technology point of view, it's surprising that the Post Office are digging their heels in, because we all know that computers aren't 100% reliable.
Yeah, they do make the point that millions of transactions are processed on these branch computer systems in post offices up and down the country every day. They have 80,000 users, and there are 11,500 post office branches, and it's only a tiny fraction of 1% who have problems. They also say that they've done their own independent investigation of the Horizon computer system, and they found no systemic problems. But the area in all this is the nub of the story, the thing that is being bitterly contested, is the scale of the problems that do exist. We do know there are problems, we just don't know how big they are. And the Post Office do know how many problems they have with Horizon, but they've never released that information.
OK. Nick, thank you very much. Now, this Christmas, drones, quadcopters, octocopters and other airborne contraptions will all be flying off the shelves.
They do look very enticing, don't they?
Well, I know somebody who wants one. He's not having one.
Well, it was reported this week that one had a near miss with a passenger jet. So we sent Michael Douglas to check out the do's and don'ts when droning.
Drone, quadcopter, unmanned aerial vehicle, RC toy?
Many words to describe one of these. A must-have Christmas present.
Quadcopter can range in price from £30 for a mini indoor drone to £15,000 for a professional setup capable of carrying a full-size camera.
So if you're lucky enough to get one of these for Christmas, you might want to know what to do with it. Here I have Andy. So Andy, tell me a bit about this.
Basically, this is the Parrot rolling Spyder. You can control this via your iPhone or your tablet. They're geared up for more indoors, for the fun. This is the basic Phantom 2. This one will give you about 22 minutes flight time. Comes with its own controller and battery. Within 30 minutes, you're up in the air and you'll be flying.
Is it a toy, this?
They're not a toy, no.
They're looking like a toy
they're
very
not,
quickly.
Yeah, that's the size. You're getting into more of the range now of photography enthusiasts. You've got an extra 2 props sitting on this one, so it's got more of a lift.
So how much is this?
This one, roughly, as you see here, with all the bits and pieces technology on it, is roughly sitting about £1,200.
So give me some do's and don'ts.
You need to be aware of your surroundings.
Okay.
Being socially aware of where you actually are, what the location is, the weather conditions, and who's actually around you. Generally, the perfect place to fly is in an open park where you know there's no one going to be about.
How do I not break it by Boxing Day?
You just got to be aware of, obviously, your walls. You're actually only in a confined space, so if you do hit a wall, generally you'll find it will be okay. You're most probably just going to scuff the wall. The actual drone will be okay.
But whatever their size, the Civil Aviation Authority classify them as aircraft, and the person operating them is called the pilot. Nick Rogers is such a pilot. He also flies jumbo jets.
So tell me, Nick, what have we got here?
So over there you have the F8 Multi Rotor.
You're making it sound like a very serious piece of equipment, which it's just a bit of a toy, is it not?
Well, it is actually a very serious piece of equipment. It has 8 running blades which move at around about 2,000 RPM. They are potentially very harmful.
The funny thing is they're such good fun, aren't they? And they're weirdly so easy to fly.
They can be simple to fly, but like any aircraft, when things start to go wrong, you need to understand the behaviour of that aircraft and what to do to mitigate any further problems.
But if I was to go and get one of these, I can just go and fly it, presumably, can I?
You can. As soon as you put a camera onto it, then you have different responsibilities. The Civil Aviation Authority have a clear set of guidelines about what you can and can't do, be it responsibilities to not film your neighbours in their back garden whilst they're sunbathing. You can't operate within 50 metres of a person, vehicle, vessel, structure not under your control. And then if you were to say, I'll give you 200 quid to go and film my house so I can give some pictures to the estate agent, strictly speaking, that then becomes a commercial activity. And no matter what the size of your drone, you should have a licence.
So kids, you want one for Christmas? Please say yes. Please say yes.
See, I did say it was more complicated than just go into the shop to get it. Now, that is the end of that. No drone.
We've got 2 at home that have, like, sort of robot wars in the sky.
You're encouraging.
Honestly, they're fantastic. Sorry. Anyway, no excuses if you get into trouble. Right.
And back to the Christmas advent calendar. That is the last time we'll say that. So you've picked one, Doe. Pick another number. Let's go for another anecdote from the book.
Number 8.
Oh,
okay.
Number 8. Let's have a look behind number 8. And, it's a wonderful bunch of folk.
Oh, well, that's the first television show I ever did in England. That's dear David Frost, who gave me my chance, Sheila Stiefel, me, the 2 Ronnies, dear Ronnie Barker on the left and Julie Felix, who used to sing on the show. It was 1966. And David plucked me out of obscurity. I was in New York and he rings me up and he says, hello, would you like to be on a show with me in the new year? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, I'm doing a show for the BBC with 2 people you won't have heard of called Ronnie Barker and Ronnie Corbett. Do you want to be in it? And 3 months later, I was on a peak hour television show. The luckiest man. I mean, he just took me out of obscurity, and I owe so much to him. He's a very, very sweet man. I'm hugely fond of him.
Brilliant.
I was so sad when he passed on.
Yeah.
And was that show at last, the 1948 show?
No, that followed shortly afterwards, because I made a bit of an impact in that show. David, who was my patron, asked me if I wanted to do a show of my own, and he had a similar idea with dear Tim Brooke-Taylor, so the 2 of us got together and we said, and we want Graham Chapman in the show. And David said, anyone else? And we said, yes, Marty Feldman. And he said, but Marty's a script writer, because in those days, Marty didn't perform.
But I
said, trust me, he's going to be a wonderful performer. So the 4 of us did this very stupid show, which was, I used to say it was halfway to Monty Python, and on Sunday I saw 2 episodes that had just been rediscovered.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's kind of exciting. We're beginning to find all these episodes that were wiped about 30 years ago.
Well, this is you and Marty doing a brilliant sketch. Here it is.
We're so lucky to see this.
Which one is this?
Here we go.
This is the face of Aristide Goulet, the French trade union leader. Aristide...
Those recordings haven't been found, have they, for 50 years? We're very lucky, as Matt said, to have those,
Well,
right?
they're beginning to turn up, just little bits of them, so we're hoping we can put the whole thing together. Because, I mean, the show, when I saw it on Sunday night, I was amazed at how like Monty Python it was. You could have taken some of the sketches right out of it and put them in.
Let's have another door.
Right,
Open.
all
Pick
right,
a number.
what about number 5?
Number 5.
That's a lovely picture. Tell us all who that is.
Well, that's dear old Dad.
Yeah.
And you know, when he was born, his name was Reginald Francis Cheese. Did you know
Which you couldn't make it up, John,
Absolutely
could you?
true. His dad was John Edwin Cheese, and when he went into the First World War, bless him, in 1915, he changed the H to an L because he was fed up with being T. So I should be a cheese.
So thanks to him, you're John Cleese.
So it was him that changed it, right?
But I would much rather have been a cheese because I think cheese is a really nice name. And now I'm lactose intolerant, so I can't stand myself. And my closest friend at school was called Barney Butter.
Oh, it works so well. But
Brilliant.
listen,
Okay.
talking of saying cheese, let's have another photo.
One
Here we
final
go.
one.
17.
17, OK.
What have we got?
Well, who is the beautiful lady in the middle?
The interesting one is second from the left.
Oh, yes, I didn't see him with a beard there.
Michael Palin! Hey! Michael Palin, although his figure isn't as good as mine.
What's going on there then, John?
Well, I've no idea. It's one of those pictures from your past.
It's one of the shot where they panned along all of the ladies in bikini, and then you're on the desk.
That's right.
Giving it that.
Yeah, that's right. We were actually shooting for the first Python film, which was a collection of sketches called And Now for Something Completely Different.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And the girl on the left is called Beulah Hughes, and she was great. She was in the television series a lot.
Wow.
It's wonderful to see that. That's 1971, I think, or 70.
Wow.
We've literally got a few seconds left on this particular item, but is there a story in the book that is your favourite?
Yes, I think one of my favourite stories, but it's too long to tell you. It's about the
just
man
entice us.
trying to kill the rabbit.
Oh.
OK.
All right,
He was the kindest man I ever met, and he saw this rabbit with myxomatosis, and he thought that he would put it out of its misery because it was a very unhappy little rabbit.
Right.
But he didn't know how to kill it.
Well, to find out how the story ends, they're going to have to buy the book, John.
Well, it's a long story, but I think it's the funniest thing I've written for 20 years.
Lots of brilliant stories in it. There is out now. It's called So Anyway. Now then, John, we know you love your Moggy. It's a great big thing you've got, isn't it, the cat? There she is. Is it a he or a she?
It's a he. It's a he, and he's called Felix. And
Lovely.
my wife took a photograph of him yesterday because he's so huge. I mean, this is like, you know those stretch limos they have in Los Angeles where they take a limo and then they sort of put a bit in the middle?
Yeah.
This is a stretch cat. Somebody's put a bit in the middle of it because it's a perfectly ordinary cat up one end and down the other end.
Yeah.
In the middle there's some extra piece of cat that shouldn't be there.
Wow.
And it's enormous.
Well, some all singing and all dancing cats, even bigger than yours, are back in the West End thanks to a revival of Baron Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical Cats.
But where did the tale begin? Well, here's how Andrew got his mittens on the kittens.
In its 33-year history, the musical Cats has become one of the most successful stage hits of all time.
It tells the story of a tribe of cats called the Jellicles, and it's been seen by over 50 million people around the world. It's also given us some of the most recognisable songs in stage history.
But the roots of this global phenomenon started with a series of verses written over 70 years ago for a young schoolgirl named Susanna Morley.
You had a very famous godfather, didn't you?
Yes, my godfather, one of my godfathers was T.S. Eliot, the poet. But to us children, always Tom. He was like a big brother.
T.S. Eliot is considered a founding father of modern poetry. but this serious literary figure had a hidden, playful side. And in 1939, he published a collection of poems about one of the nation's favourite animals.
Yes, well, this is the first edition of Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. So there I am, Susanna Loveday Morley was me, from her affectionate godparent, Uncle Tom.
Well, this collection of poems
Yes.
first appeared in a way in letters to you.
Yes, they were written to us, to a whole group of us children at that time. Then he decided to make a collection of them, and this is why he put them together as Old Possum's Book. That was his own nickname for himself, Old Possum.
The book sparkles with witty stories about colourful feline characters, with names like Mr. Mistopheles and Mungo Jerry.
I think McCavity has got to be my favourite. McCavity's a mystery cat. He's called the Hidden Paw, for he's the master criminal who can defy the law. He's the bafflement of Scotland Yard, the flying squad's despair.
For when they reach the scene of crime, McCavity's not there.
McCavity, there's no one like
The escapades of characters like McCavity amused and entertained children around the world. And years later, one young fan would be inspired to bring them to life through music.
Reach the scene of crime. McCavity's not there. Well, this is the copy of Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats that I had when I was a child, and it's the one that I wrote the show on. It's got all my notes, all my thoughts and everything.
How old are you when you first got this book?
I'd have been about 8, I guess.
And when you read these poems,
Well,
did you hear the melodies then?
No, not really. I mean, when I was a kid, I just loved them, and I often used to come back to them just because I liked them. But the amazing thing is just how musical these words are. A brilliant, brilliant writer using language and images.
Joe, what's your absolute favourite?
Oh, gosh. Funnily enough, I do like Skimble. I think that he's always very sweet. Well, this is my version of it. There's a whisper down the line at 11:39 when the night mail's ready to depart, saying, Skimble, where is Skimble? Has he gone to hunt the thimble? We must find him or the train can't start. I always loved, and he gives one flash of his glass green eyes, and the signal goes all clear. And we're off at last for the northern part of the northern hemisphere. I've just always loved that. I always loved that in the show, and I just thought it was one of those moments where you could just see the audience just light up. And Skimble was such a lovely, lovely cat in charge of everything, making sure that the trains all run on time. And without Skimble, the trains could not have gone. So thank you, T.S. Eliot.
In 1981, Cats opened to critical acclaim, and this December the curtain goes up on an updated version with a brand new cast. It's a new life for these old poems and a fitting tribute to the playful side of one of our greatest poets.
I can't wait to see the new version of Cats. And thank you, Keris. To see more of that brilliant interview with Baron Andrew Lloyd Webber, please go to our website.
Yes. Now, John, just very quickly, you're writing a musical about a fish.
Yes, about a fish called Wanda. I've written the first draft with my lovely daughter, Camilla.
Great.
And we're hoping we can turn it into a musical, because I've never done that before, and I love to do new things.
Well, fingers crossed, that'll be a good one.
Yeah, we wish you all the very
Excellent.
best with that, John, and thank you so much for your company tonight.
Oh,
it's
thank you for
been
having
super. Thanks for telling us all those stories as well. I'm sorry we couldn't get to a
No,
few
to
more.
more. Sorry, John's autobiography, So Anyway, is out now, and he's touring with his book until the 21st of December. And sorry again for John's fruity language, John. Sorry if it offended anybody.
I didn't know you couldn't say that word. I
let's
used
not
to
say
say
it
it.
again.
I used to say it in Monty Python.
Oh, well, maybe not at 7 o'clock.
It's
but
1960.
anyway.
Oh,
Tomorrow
I
we're going to be here with Al Murray and James.
Oh,
Scott.
yes.
Hope you can join us then.
Bye.
Thank you.
Tosh is one angry woman. EastEnders next.
With a Blue Peter attitude, you can do anything. Get your badge.
Don't want a lot for Christmas. Come on. I don't need to hang my stocking there upon the fireplace. Santa Claus won't make me happy with a toy on Christmas Day. I just want you for my own, more than you could ever know. Make my wish come true.
Christmas on BBC One. Be with the ones you love.